Welcome to the Bothell City Council regular meeting of February 7th, 2017. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, all council members are here. Let's see. Meeting agenda approval. Is there any changes to tonight's meeting agenda? Seeing none. Review of upcoming. Oh, you have one. Councilmember Freed.
Yeah, I just want to pull the 17029, the stay out of drug areas.
That's 17029. 029. Okay. Pull from consent. Is there anybody else? Seeing none. Review of upcoming public engagement opportunities. We have a deadline to apply for the board and commission openings Friday, February 17th at 5 p.m. Community Resources Day, Friday, February 24th from 2 to 4 p.m. at Cascadia College Mobius Hall. The council conversations with Deputy Mayor Davina Dewar, Sunday, February 26th from 2 p.m. on at the Bothell Public Library. And the last is the groundbreaking ceremony for Main Street Enhancement Project on Tuesday, March 28th from 10 to 11 a.m. on Main Street. With that, we have the review of the projected agenda. Is there any changes to the projected agenda? Seeing none, we'll go into the visitor comment section of the meeting. We moved that up, by the way, before the consent agenda, so if people wanted to speak to something on the consent agenda, they could actually have the opportunity to do so before we vote. So the public comment period, I'm going to read this out of the protocol manual. Each person addressing the council will give his or her name in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless the council grants further time, should limit the address to 3 minutes. All remarks will be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. No person other than the council and the person having the floor will be permitted to enter in any discussion either directly or through a member of the council without the permission of the mayor. And we have these little sign-up sheets, but you don't have to fill one out. But there are some out at the table when you come in. So the first one is Robert Karsrud.
Thank you. I just had one quick comment regarding AB 17030. I had seen a previous version of this resolution that included some language that I personally found mildly troubling, and I see that language is no longer in the version that's going to be voted on tonight, and obviously, or apparently, the council sought, received, and responded to comments from the public, and I just want to thank you for your efforts to be as inclusive as possible in what the statement actually is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Robert Fancer.
Good evening. My name is Robert Fancher, like rancher, but with an F. I've been before this council 2 other times regarding the sanctuary city ordinance that I proposed. Apparently it's a resolution, and I didn't get much feedback, especially from the last emails I sent. So I'm a little disappointed with the current resolution as it's proposed. It does not address the concerns of the students, which was specifically geared towards undocumented immigrants. And I believe in not addressing that, we're doing a disservice to members of our community, specifically these students. I would like to point out that some of the concerns raised in the past were about the constitutionality of sanctuary cities, and I presented several, both times, documents, research that pointed to the ideas that maybe it is constitutional. I believe it's also our duty as citizens to speak up for our visitors here. I believe it is our obligation to examine, the I believe it's our obligation to examine the executive orders that have been written and to, challenge those. And I would hope that we can move forward and, look at maybe a resolution in the future that does address these concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to provide public comment? Please come up to the podium and give your name for the record.
Good evening, members of council. Mike Challenger, 21015 9th Avenue Southeast, in the north end of this fair city. I wish to speak to the resolution before you tonight. I'm sorry I was late coming to the discussion, but I've been otherwise engaged in family matters. I find this resolution quite perplexing. It seems to me a waste of time and resources to prepare a document that reiterates that which has already been established by the articles and amendments of both Constitutions of the United States and of Washington State. We are all equal before the law. The law prohibits discrimination of any sort. The law provides remedies for those who feel they have been discriminated against. In searching for other reasons for the presentation of this resolution, it occurred to me that your zeal to appear inclusive, you have inadvertently continued the trend towards identity politics that has been raising its ugly head in this country for the past few years. I refer, of course, to the determined attempt to balkanize this country along racial, ethnic, and religious lines. This country, unlike most other countries, is identified by ideas, common beliefs, and goals, and not tribalism. This is a policy of divisiveness and not diversity. There's a thin line of meaning between these two. So the civil discourse, legitimate criticism of some government policy or other, is met with angry cries of racism, xenophobia, homophobia, whatever. It leads to unfounded charges of hate speech and, of course, stifles legitimate concerns. It is wrong of you to pick out specific groups of people as you have done in this resolution. It implies separateness. You all know that I'm a first-generation immigrant. I came here the hard way, that is legally. I've been a citizen for nearly 40 years. I love and cherish this country, and I'm saddened by this divisiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak? Please come up to the podium and state your name.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Brommer. I'm a resident of Bothell since 2000. I really support the fact that you guys are putting forth a resolution to whether it's declared a safe city or welcoming city or however you determine it, because it indicates that you welcome all people and you provide a safe space for them. I do want to say that I feel that one thing that the document is lacking is that it's not confirming that that per like Bothell police policy that police officers will not inquire into anyone's immigration status and actually saying that everyone undocumented or documented or of whatever religion or ethnicity is accepted, protected, and safe. So I think that it's a little vague and a little too broad, and you need to specifically say that people are going to be protected and that they are accorded the human rights and equity that you would like them to have, and that they are safe in this community. As well, I know you shy away from sanctuary city because you're afraid of losing income from the federal government because of Trump's targeting that term and threatening that. But I do believe that it's a matter of humanity, and that is very important to prioritize people over money. And I just wanted to say that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we had another one. Go ahead. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Kristen Austin, and I came to speak in support of the resolution as well. I'm late to following along with precisely what you're doing, but I came to speak in support of the resolution because I was lucky enough to attend the Women's March, and one of the most wonderful things about being there was how diverse the crowd was. There was some of everybody there, and it was a wonderful experience. And I think that's the kind of feeling that we want in all of our communities. And I do agree in speaking in support of students in particular. One of the most moving signs I saw at the resolution was a girl carrying a sign. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Carrying a sign saying, "I'm a dreamer." And that really meant something to me. And I look at my daughter and I look at her friends, and I want all of them to feel included and welcome and not, excuse me, not worrying about going home and wondering if their parents are going to be there when they get there. So I came to support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? Please come up and give your name for the record.
I didn't plan on doing that. It was an accident, but now I'm here. So I'm Lynn Stewart German, and I just want to say that before my daughter was born, her mom and I couldn't be married. So she will never know a time that we couldn't be a family. But because of all of the small steps that people took along the way, those changes were made. And I just, in line with all these people, want to encourage you to take small steps, not because we need them, and we are steadfastly approaching a time of need, but because they're important and because that's how change made. Our family voted for a diverse city council. We did that with intention and to protect our family, to create a great city. We were not voting people before we came to Bothell. We moved around a lot, and this is our city now. So we just want to say that we trust that you'll make the best decisions that you can along the way with the information you have, and that we really hope that they will be in favor of all of our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to provide public comment? Please come up to the podium. State your name.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Schreiger. Do you need my address or? Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the council for adjusting the language. I really appreciate you listening and putting some thought and responding to my emails. So I think that that is really great. At the same time, I really have to disagree. I don't like people being put in various groups and you know, you're white and you're black and you're Catholic and you're whatever. I'd like there to be more cohesion, and I'd like us all to be just people who care about each other. I'm Jewish. I've faced anti-Semitism in my life, but that doesn't define me. And what I love about Bothell is I find this to be a really caring community. I am sympathetic for people who have had bad experiences or have felt marginalized or anything else. I really do. But I really feel like the approach should be more unified. There used to be a sign that said, welcoming, you know, we welcome you to Bothell for a day or a lifetime. There's actually a lot of people who signed a petition to reinstate that sign. And that sign really meant a lot to me. It meant like, you're welcome, you're going to be treated fairly for a day, for a lifetime. And I think a sign means a lot more personally than a resolution, because I think it took a lot of time, and it's taking a lot of time for you to think about this, and you're including all these different people, and then people want you to include even more people. And there might be categories of people you'll still leave out, but we shouldn't be a category. I guess lastly, I called the Bothell Police Department because I was alarmed about hate crimes and other things that I was reading about on the internet and that I was hearing discussed. And the Deputy Chief Henry Simon told me that there haven't been hate crimes. There haven't been reports to him of a problem. He said there was one defacement of a Hindu temple. They caught 3 kids who seemed like they were ignorant, and they weren't representing any advancement in hate or discrimination. I think that this feels like a very liberal and open area, and I am surprised that people feel the way they do. I respect how everybody feels, but this is the way I feel. I have neighbors in my neighborhood who are really, really upset and feel not listened to about other matters, and so I would prefer that to be, the running of the city to be more of the focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to provide comment? Seeing none, we'll move into the consent agenda. So we have AB 17-09 removed from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, the remainder of the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Magny, second by Deputy Mayor Dewar. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Passes unanimously. And now we pulled AB 17-029, which is an ordinance establishing a stay out of drug area. And Councilmember Freed.
Great, thanks. I guess I would ask questions to you, Paul, about this item?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Just curious, why do we have to limit it to certain sections of the city? Why can't this type of control of illegal substances be throughout the city?
The reason that we did it in these 2 areas specifically is that the data supported that. The attachment, I think it's attachment 4, was information that was compiled by Captain Bob Wolverton. Yeah, it's the statistical data as attachment 4. And so what the officers really noticed was that in those particular areas, both in the Fred Meyer parking lot and the vicinity, and also at the extended stay and the McDonald's, that's where a lot of drug activity was occurring. And because it was consolidated just to those areas, it allowed for us to go into those known areas and then arrest people that have been given the order by the municipal court judge who are either on probation or pretrial conditions of release. So while we could, I guess, in theory, have made the entire city a stay out of drug area, it loses its teeth when there isn't really data to support making the entirety of the city a drug area.
So at some point, I imagine if they can't sell in this place, they're just going to move to the next corner that's not currently in the soda.
That is correct, and that's something that we did contemplate. Right now, those are the 2 primary areas. And the reason for those areas is that they're close to very major arterials, and also because they are. There's a lot of human traffic in that area. There's a lot of people going to the Fred Meyer, a lot of people to McDonald's and the extended stay. And so because it's easy to get to, easy to leave, and because there's a lot of people, it allows for people that are going to be engaging in the trafficking or use of drugs to basically be less easily detected. And so if those areas, if the stay out of drug area ordinance is effective in allowing officers to patrol those areas, arrest people that are not supposed to be there, there is a possibility that they might shift to another area. But in the city of Bothell, there are fewer areas that would then lend themselves to that intersection of major arterial roads and a lot of foot traffic.
So once we start this process, it seems that you'll just keep coming back for amendments to add additional soda areas?
Possibly. I can't say for certain. The chief and I talked about other areas, specifically that there was concern that it might move south towards the new Safeway that opened up. I don't think that that is as likely because it only has one major road going through it. It doesn't have a cross section, and it's also a little bit more isolated than the Canyon Park expanse, where the other areas are. So although it is a bigger area, you're not going to get the same type of foot traffic that you would get in the Canyon Park area and up near Fred Meyer. So some of it may shift, but it's going to be a lot more noticeable. And that's why we don't think it's going to be an area that the criminal element would choose to congregate at.
So it's interesting, when legalization of marijuana came, with that came regulations on where it could be sold. So, but still mentioned in here as controlled substances are spoken about in the soda area. Why isn't it state law already controls where drugs can be sold, whether controlled or illegal?
Well, I mean, state law doesn't allow the possession use of controlled substances that are defined by RCW 6950. But this is beyond just mere possession. If someone has been caught in that area and has been using drugs, and even if they haven't been caught in that area, if they've been caught and they are brought before the Bothell Municipal Court, with the passage of this legislation, the judge can say, listen, you're using heroin, methamphetamine, whatever the drug is. And because there are areas in the city where there's a higher incident of drug use, I'm ordering you to stay out of that area. So it's not really commenting on the possession, the manufacturing, the delivery. It's just that if you have been caught if you are accused of a drug crime, the judge has found probable cause, or if you've pleaded guilty or been found guilty of a drug crime and the judge has put you on probation, the judge can then legally curtail where you can and cannot go. So it's less about possession and more about just not introducing people that have known drug history back into that drug element.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. You've been very helpful.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, I can move.
Go for it.
Move the recommended action.
Moved by Councilmember Freed, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to adopt the attached proposed ordinance for the, what are they called?
Soda.
Stay out of drug areas or sodas. Any discussion on the motion? See none. Cast your ballot or vote. Maybe. Oh, that went. Passes unanimously. And we are on to ordinances and resolutions. AB 17-030, resolution reaffirming the City of Bothell's commitment to be a safe, welcoming, and equitable community for all. And we have a staff presentation by our City Manager, Jennifer Phillips.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So a very brief presentation on this. As you can see in the history on your agenda bill, this was first discussed in November 2016. In December, staff and students from University of Washington Bothell came to address the council requesting some sort of resolution or ordinance for ensuring that individuals who are here in our community are safe. And so back then, following that on January 10th, the council held a study session to gather more information about what the request was and what type of a resolution could be put together for the community. And so based on that, additional work that staff did within the community, talking to various cities, police departments, the sheriff's department, we've put together a resolution that hopefully meets the intent of what the council directed us to do, as well as meets what the community had requested. Just as a statement as your city manager, this is now my third week. And so I can't speak to, the decades of who Bothell has been, but I can tell you from talking to staff, and we have staff here who have worked in this community, worked for the city for over 30 years. What we're presenting before you tonight in this resolution is who we have been for many, many years. It's who we are today, and it's who we continue to be in the future. As your city manager, this is exactly how I lead. If you look around the room today, community, this is your leadership team. And this is how this leadership team treats each other, treats members of the community. It's how we treat our family. It's just the right way to be a human being. This is about dignity and basic human rights. And so this is our team, and this is who leads your organization and delivers your services to your community. And we are committed to having a safe city, an inclusive city, and a welcoming city. And so you can see what's written on paper. but I think it's also important that you see the faces in the room of the people who are here making decisions and bringing items before the council and who are delivering the services in your community. And we are very committed to a welcoming, safe, and inclusive city. And so I hope that that's also reassuring as you look at the faces behind the policies that happen here in the city. We're happy to answer any questions. The police chief is here as well, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, great. So are there council questions? Councilmember Freed?
Great, I have some questions and some discussion. I was looking over this resolution. I know we've seen a few different versions, so for the public that might have been confusing. For a point of clarity, there is another altered resolution, just the first page. Paul, is this from you?
It is not.
Okay, so maybe a member of the public put it up here. Oh, Tristan. Okay, great, thank you. In the staff executive summary, it talks about many groups were mentioned, people of color, members of the LGBTQI community, non-Christians, people who are differently abled, women and girls, and both documented and undocumented immigrants. I found it interesting that in the staff agenda bill and the executive summary, Christians weren't mentioned. The sad fact is Christians are the most persecuted group across the globe. In 2015, 105,000 Christians were actually murdered for their faith. In 2016, 90,000 Christians were killed for their faith. That's one Christian every 6 minutes. About 600 million Christians were prevented from practicing their faith in 2016 across the world. We've seen videos of, I think there were 12 Ethiopians that were brought upon the beach by members of ISIS, and they were beheaded because of their faith in Christ. The Middle East has been a dangerous place for people of many religions, not just Christians alone. But if you didn't agree with a certain ideology, you were executed. Actually, it's interesting, in Iraq in 2003, there were 1.5 million Christians. Today, there's 275,000. In Syria, the number went from 1.5 million down to 500,000 as a result of conflicts there. And Christians aren't just persecuted in the Middle East, they're also persecuted in areas in Africa. When I was a child, I was raised in Egypt for 4 years of my life. I actually lived in Pakistan as well. One of my best friends was the son of one of the warring generals in Afghanistan. They were living in Pakistan. My dad worked for the United States Agency for International Development. He set up refugee programs in Pakistan that served probably 1.5 million refugees. My dad's dedicated much of his life to serving in Africa, setting up feeding programs for refugees and many of the warring tribes there. We've lived in a very troubled times. Actually, as far as refugees or immigrants coming here to America, I used to live on the farm here just in Bothell. And we actually had 40 Vietnamese that lived in my house that fled the war in Vietnam. I have a Vietnamese aunt. I have a Chinese aunt, Vietnamese and Chinese cousins. Actually, was just thinking about persecution. When I lived in Pakistan, I used to see anti-American riots regularly. I remember driving on our way past the Capitol, and there would be anti-American signs. I remember my mom turning the car around so that we would not literally get killed. I was at the market once having dinner, and a car bomb went off. The church that I actually went to had a hand grenade thrown into the church, and people died. Persecution of religion is worldwide and horrific. I've seen it. We serve in the Philippines each year, down in the southern area of the Philippines, just the island south of where we go. There's conflicts all the time where Christians are killed on a regular basis. It's wrong for Christians to be killed. It's wrong for Muslims to be killed. It's wrong for Hindus to be killed. It's wrong for anyone of any religion to be killed for any reason in America or around the world. It is absolutely horrific. And I just bring this portion up because it mentioned in the agenda bill about non-Christians, but I would say it's all religions collectively that need to be protected. I have a couple questions for staff. And first is, does this resolution in front of us change any of the existing policies in the city of Bothell? Paul?
No.
Will the policies and practices of our police department be different in any way if this resolution passes?
No.
If the answer to these questions is no, then what's the purpose of the resolution?
I think it's to reaffirm, based on the recent history, it's to reaffirm the city's commitment to be the community that Jennifer just described.
Okay.
So I think that in recent time, I think that there's been a loss of that focus, and people have been focusing on other things, and it's just a way to kind of bring everyone back to center and say, this is the community that we choose to live in and work in.
So we've all been watching the news. We've all been part of our society since birth, right? There are cities around the country that have stated that they're not willing to forfeit federal funding to protest and actively oppose President Trump's policies on immigration. And this resolution is specifically drafted, from my understanding, to avoid that. This resolution is drafted to ensure compliance with federal law and President Trump's immigration policies so as not to jeopardize even one dime of the federal money following our city, as I think one of our speakers just said. So I think we should need to pause for a moment and just consider this resolution that where and how it's written, and making sure that we're properly addressing the issues that are important to us as a collective council up here. The truth is our police have done the right thing, and they'll continue to do the right thing regardless of whether this passes. Violent crimes who are undocumented will not be protected from the full force of the law, federal and state, and I don't know if I said that correctly. Violent criminals who are undocumented will not be protected from the full force of the law, federal and state, and victims of crime who are undocumented will not be punished for reporting crimes and trying to keep our communities safe. This is what our police have done and will continue to do so because it's the right thing to do, not because we've decided to take a posture with zero political or financial risk to ourselves. And I want to thank our chief of police and every single officer in our department for their smart and proactive community-based policing that has given us one of the lowest crime rates on the east side. So I thank you, Chief, and to your staff for that as well. In regards to the resolution, I do have a question on a couple language changes I have and wanted to know, Paul, what you might think if this is a legal thought or not. But in the third whereas, it says, the best way to engage underserved and underrepresented communities with local government is through creating trusting relationship built upon mutual respect and understanding. My thought, this resolution is supposed to be kind of all-encompassing, meaning all-inclusive, rather. I wonder if it would be appropriate to say, whereas the best way to engage all members of our community with local government, rather than just say underserved and represented.
That's a motion that you could make that council could then discuss and vote on.
Okay.
But
and
it
then
doesn't change the other underlying legality of it.
And then in the last whereas on page 1, it says the council of the city of Bothell strongly condemns act of hate, which we do. I do, and I know their council members speak to it, violence, intimidation, harassment, and it says, and any other acts that are based upon so-and-so and so-and-so. Just, any other act seems broad. I mean, any other act could be an act of love toward any of these things. I wonder if we could just say any similar other acts.
And again, that's a choice that if you want to propose that amendment, council can then vote on that as
Okay.
well.
Paul, you've been very helpful. I thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Deputy Mayor?
So I wanted to ask the chief, how long has our police policy been in place? I know we've talked about that we're not changing anything, but I would like to understand how long this policy that we currently have and we're reaffirming has been in place.
So before I arrived at Bothell, we had a lot of different, we had policies, we had training bulletins, so on. When I got to Bothell, we started the process of formalizing them all into a policy manual in one location. So that policy was formally adopted in 2014. Prior to that, that had been the policy of the department, but it hadn't been formally adopted. So 2014, and then recently we, as we often do, we look at the policies and we update or we modify. And this time in January, we took the immigration policy and combined it with the consul notification and the UV policy, UV visa policy, so that officers and the residents, if they're interested, will see all of the policies involving foreign nationals in one place. But it didn't substantially change what we had been doing for years. And I'd like to add that when I came to Bothell and heard that this was how, how our officers operated, I wasn't at all surprised. I've been working for the sheriff's office for 27 years, and for as long as I could remember, that was the King County Sheriff's policy too. And talking to the chiefs in this region, both in Snohomish County and King County, there may be a department that has a different policy. I have not yet spoken to a chief that has a different policy. It's common sense. We don't enforce federal law. We enforce Washington law. And this type of policy where people trust that they can come to the police and be heard and report crimes, report the witnesses to crimes, it keeps us all safer.
Thank you. Could you also maybe speak a little bit about hate crimes? One of the visitors said there's only been one. I can remember hearing about something happening at the Islamic Center where their Qurans were desecrated and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering if it's true there's only been one hate crime in Bothell at the Hindu temple, which is not even in Bothell.
So, again, you're trying to work through my memory banks, but we did have, I'm going to, several years ago, at the Islamic Center of Bothell, when it was in its old location, I think it was East Riverside Drive, there was an incident of somebody leaving pamphlets of with hate literature, basically, in their parking lot. Then the incident that most of you remember, it was not just the Hindu temple, which was right outside of the city, but there was also a school within the city limits of Bothell that had been spray painted, and we investigated, and it's correct that it was 3 juveniles that had done both of those acts, and I agree with the speaker who was saying that it was really ignorance. As far as other hate crimes, we get reports of things that may be, we've investigated, and I would have to double check, but I don't believe we've had any that we have then forwarded forward to for prosecution, but I will have to verify that.
There have been increases, though, in our area, have there not? I mean, I've heard a couple of at different mosques in Redmond and whatnot.
Yes, you're correct. In Redmond, they've had at least 2 significant vandalisms to their sign. They had an arson in Bellevue of I believe it was a mosque there. So there have been, just in our local area, I've had conversation, in fact I regularly speak with members from the ICOB, and so far, you know, they've actually said the residents of Bothell have been incredibly welcoming to them, given a lot of the things that have been happening in the last little bit. We did have a burglary there, but it turns out it was not based on the fact that it was as an Islamic center. It was just a happenstance that they broke in there.
Can I ask, this is just opinion, but do you have an opinion on the resolution and whether or not it would be helpful to reiterate the police policy or reference it at all in the resolution?
I have not read the most recent policy or resolution, so I would hesitate to comment on it. I see these things differently. The policy is how our officers operate, and it's what is best for our community and for our officers. I really strongly believe that. And so the resolution, I think with the way the city manager stated, from what you've discussed, because I did see the earlier versions, and it sounds like it's, you know, changing and evolving. It sounds like it's describing the community that I have really grown to love, and the actions of the people that live here and support each other. But as far as, you know, the decision on that you'll make, I would prefer to read it before I
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councilmember Sandberg?
So I'm just going to ask a couple questions on the draft, the modified draft that I put in front of council and then members of staff. On the first whereas, at the end, you mentioned workforce, diversity in workforce and marketplace. What was that intended to convey?
People of different socioeconomic statuses.
Okay. And on the fourth whereas down, where you state that the City of Bothell understands that a healthy city is one in which all members of the community have an equity-based opportunity to access city services. Is there some meaning in equity-based that is different than equal opportunity? Because, you know, I think sometimes people understand equal, but maybe there was some other deeper meaning in equity-based that you or somebody else had wanted to convey with that.
Not really. There wasn't a deeper meaning. A lot of times when people talk of equal access, it's not really representative of the services that they need from the city. Whereas some people, when they come to the city for a service, might need a greater depth of service to get them where they need to be. And some people might, I mean, I often get phone calls when I'm off the phone in 10 seconds because I've answered their question. And so I wanted to get away from, first of all, I borrowed this language, so it's not mine, but I looked at it. And the reason that I like the equity-based as opposed to equal is that it is the focus is meeting people where they are and giving them what they need, as opposed to treating everyone like a cookie cutter and giving them equal services when that may or may not be what they need.
Okay, thank you. I'll reserve my comments for the rest of this draft if after the other people get to have their questions answered.
Anybody else? Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple questions on the, so the housing status that's down below, that is more of an economic housing status?
Yes.
Okay. And then up at the first whereas, I think you do have, you've listed religion. You've listed the word diversity. I think for me, diversity can mean many different things. It means many different things to many different people. So I wanted to bring that point up. And then equity depends on the, you know, how you look at equity. What is the equity based on? Would be another one. And I have quite a few things that I want to say about this resolution as a whole, but I think I'll reserve that for final comments. But I do think, I guess one point that I would make to my colleagues up here on council is this resolution must be for all people within our community. And we should not limit it to specific individuals, because when we limit it to specific individuals, then other individuals can look at it as not being inclusive for them. So I would say that however this is worded, we need to make sure that it's inclusive for all members of our community. But I hope we have time to speak additionally on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Spivey, do you have any questions? Nope. No questions. Okay. I just had a couple quick questions. So the police policy that we were just discussing, is that posted on our website, or is it, how did somebody access that?
We posted on the website in January, so just go to the, we're going to double check that you can just go to the City of Bothell webpage and it will be there.
Just right on the front page?
It's on the home page.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that was the only question I had. I have a bunch of comments and things, but I'll reserve those. So do we want to start a round of discussion, or do you want to start with a motion? How do you guys want to do it? Discussion? Okay. Who would like to have discussion first? Anybody? Councilmember Sandberg. Thank you.
Okay, so I put before you some some suggested changes. And I wanted to point out that, first of all, we have the first whereas, the second whereas, and the last whereas all have lists of groups, and the lists are different. So part of my changes, suggested changes, are to remedy that. In the first whereas, I have proposed that it read, whereas the city of Bothell is a city with great diversity among race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, age, sexual orientation, gender identification, country of origin, veteran status, and disability, striking the rest. For a couple of reasons. We did receive comment from a member of the community that explained that although our intention might have been a good intention, differently abled is not a positive term perceived in that community, and that they prefer the term disability. Also differently abled isn't even parallel with the rest of the terms. I think that workforce and marketplace are covered in socioeconomic status. I also want to comment that just in the process of making a list of people that you're trying to be inclusive, you are by definition excluding people who aren't in the list. But it is our try, and I know that members of the public have made that argument. So I want to let you know that I appreciate that argument. I understand that argument. I guess this is my first best effort. So then you go down to the second whereas in Bothell, all members of the community who choose to live here peacefully have the right to be treated fairly and to live their lives with dignity, free from discrimination and targeting. And I would like to end it at that point because, again, that list that follows based on race, religion, country of origin, and any other identity isn't parallel to the first list. So we've established a list in the first whereas to be consistent. I wouldn't keep relisting. I support Councilmember Freed's change to the third whereas to read, whereas the best way to engage all members of our community with local government is through creating trusting relationships built upon mutual respect and understanding. Now that I understand, so for the fourth whereas, now that I understand what our city attorney feels is conveyed with equity-based, I understand that term now, and I support that. I support the following whereas as written. The next two whereases as written. And then I would insert before the final whereas this one that I've written in bottom at in blue, because when we started this conversation, it started with students from the University of Washington, DACA students coming before us concerned about being targeted for their immigration status alone. And so I would make a change to my change and say, whereas the City of Bothell's longstanding policy on foreign nationals delineates the role of federal and local governments in determining immigration status. I think the chief did a really good job of explaining that there is that separation in role of our police enforce our local and state laws. We don't enforce the federal laws. And we also received the article from the National League of Cities forwarded to us from city manager stating that asking cities to do that is actually an unfunded mandate. And it's just not something that we have budgeted for. But the reverse of that, people have also expressed, well, if Bothell becomes this sanctuary, or however you want to term it, city, then if I'm an illegal immigrant, I'm going to commit a crime, I'm going to do it in Bothell because then I'm going to be protected. And that is not the policy of our police department. That is not the policy of this council. I think Councilmember Freed asked that whole line of questioning with staff already. So I wanted to put that whereas in to recognize our longstanding policy on foreign nationals, and I don't want to belabor that. I don't want to include more descriptive language because people can refer to that policy. And then finally, I agree with Councilmember Freed's suggestion, and I have a change. Again, striking that list because it's not consistent with the first list we establish, and have it read, whereas the Council of the City of Bothell strongly condemns acts of hate, violence, intimidation, harassment, or any similar acts that are directed at members of our diverse community. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Who would like to go next? Discussion? You guys are quiet. Deputy Mayor.
I agree with pretty much everything that Councilmember Sandberg just said. I also had the comment about disability versus differently abled come to my attention, so I'm glad that we included that. I'm in favor of getting rid of lists. I like Councilmember Freed's suggestion to engage all members of our community. I guess I should have asked this during questions. I'm not quite sure what pro-equality means in city practice. I'm not sure if the community would know what pro-equity means other than you're for equity. And I do like the change. Councilmember Sandberg read it as the City of Bothell, but it's actually on this sheet that she handed out, whereas the Bothell Police Department's longstanding policy on foreign nationals delineates the role of federal and local governments in determining immigration status. So I like having the police department versus the city because they're different in a way because council didn't create the policy. The police department did based on their knowledge of what makes a safe community. So with that, I guess I don't really have any changes, and I'll reserve my comments for later.
Councilmember Freed.
I appreciate the changes that Councilmember Sandberg made. I do want to be able to ask a question since there was one new whereas inserted, if that's permissible. I had read the policy of the Bothell Police Department, I think, last week when it was sent out via email. I'm trying to recall. So I'm trying to look it over again. But this whereas, where it says, whereas the Bothell Police Department's longstanding policy on foreign nationals delineates the role of federal and local governments in determining immigration status. As I read our policy, this language is not a sanctuary city type language, meaning we do cooperate with the federal government on when there's something that occurs with immigrants who have come here illegally. I mean, we do participate. We're not saying we're not going to participate in that, as I understand the policy. Is that correct?
So whether you pass a sanctuary city resolution or not, that does not preclude federal officers from coming into the city. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think anywhere in the United States. So, and of course, if we stop somebody that has a federal warrant, that is a signed warrant by a judge. If we have somebody that is, we are trying to locate that we're investigating for a felony crime or a DV assault, I'll go anywhere I need to go to try to find that person. So it's a balance of, what's relevant. So if somebody is suspected of a crime where your residency has a component of it, such as international drug trafficking, sex trafficking is a big one, that may enter into it. But if we are just investigating a crime, an average crime, like say a burglary, your residency really has nothing to do with our investigation. I mean, whether or not you've committed that crime, and it's really not relevant.
Yeah. I think I understand you're perfectly clear. Some people may have the fear that people are walking down the street, and if they look different, they're going to be asked for their identification. That is not our standard. We would never be our standard. That is horrific.
That is what the very first thing in the policy that it says.
Right.
We shall not do that.
Yeah. In our policy in the police department and in the city of Bothell, we obviously believe in law. We support our own law. We live under federal law. There is no question in that regard.
Correct. And I want all residents to know that if they're suffering from domestic violence in their home, if they have witnessed somebody committing a crime, if they are worried that something has happened to their child and they need to report it to the police, that they absolutely can do that without any fear of repercussion.
Absolutely. I think that should be stated again, so I'll try to state it again and you'll cut me off. But our concern as a council is if there is somebody that is maybe a wife that's being physically abused at home, that she's here undocumented or illegally, she can call and let Bothell Police Department know that her husband or someone is physically abusing her without fear of the Bothell Police Department. I mean, we need to make that explicitly clear.
That is exactly right. And similarly, we do not want to have we don't want to bring crime into our community either. And I have seen that in other communities where you have frequently a immigrant population, whether they're documented or not, that are fearful of the police. And so suspects know that, and they start targeting them because they know they won't report it to the police. That is the last thing that we want to have happen in Bothell. So it's critically important to me as a police chief that anybody that is living in our city can call 911 when they need help, when they are being victimized, when they think somebody else is being victimized, when they have witnessed something, when they need assistance, and to know they can do so without fear. And I'm very passionate about that because that keeps all of our citizens, all of our residents safe, whether they're documented, undocumented, or visitors coming through. I mean, that's, we serve those in our community.
So Bothell believes in equal treatment under the law. As I understand this resolution as written and now amended, follows all state, federal laws. Is that correct?
It does.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Spivey?
Great, thank you. I'm comfortable with everything that's been presented. Councilmember Sandberg, she had pointed out in the second whereas, just striking everything after that list after targeting, and I was just thinking that maybe we could put after the word targeting for any reason, then period, and just leave it at that. It's just something to chew on as we move through this. I'll reserve comment until we have a motion and a final resolution with a motion.
And Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification. I believe Councilmember Freed said that he is in favor of all of the amendments that have been made, and I don't believe that there's been a formal motion to amend. I've kept track of everything.
There hasn't been, yeah.
So I've kept track of everything that Councilmember Sandberg suggested, and that the other council members have added into. So if there ultimately is a motion to amend, to change the resolution to incorporate all of those discussion items, I have those ready for council.
So you'd try to read it off to us after taking notes up over there?
No, I think the amendment would be that the resolution, there's a motion to amend the resolution consistent with the comments made from council. I've kept track of those. We can then, with the city clerk, there's, I think, section 3 or section 4 of the whereas statement that allows the city clerk to make those changes.
Okay. Councilmember Agnew?
I agree with the sentiment. I agree with the wordsmithing. Troubling times. Councilmember McNeil said that people are scared nowadays. I said, well, I lived through the 60s and we were a little concerned back then too. but for different reasons. What we're trying to do is the right thing. What we're trying to do is tell people that they can come into the city and they can be treated fairly. They don't have to worry about discrimination. They don't have to worry about hate. They don't have to worry about their immigration status. Section 2 says the City Council is committed to standing together with the people of Bothell and opposing hate, violence, and acts of intolerance committed against our community members. And I think we're doing that. I think we're going to wordsmith it, we're going to get it together, we're going to get it right, and we're going to put it out. Is it going to please everybody? Absolutely not. There are some people that are going to say that we haven't gone too far, and there's going to be some people that say we've gone too far. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make this a safe city for everyone. We feel it's safe. We feel that most people feel that it's safe. We're just going to try to put it down in words.
Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. So I'm just going to kind of speak to each one of the whereases. I kind of agree with number one. I see that as more describing our community, and having the different items in there, I think is okay. Number two talks a little bit about where we choose to live, and I agree with removing the race, religion, country of origin, et cetera, that we have up above, in the whereas above, number one. Whereas number three, I'm a bit concerned, or a bit confused, I guess I will say, on the best way to engage underserved and underrepresented communities with local government. I'm not sure what that tends to say, if we tend to say that we have parts of our community that are underserved and underrepresented. But I'm a little, I just would like to know what that means a little bit more. Number four, I'm okay with number four. Number five, the pro-equality, as the deputy mayor pointed out, I'm trying to understand what that means. Number six, I'm okay with number six. And then number seven, there was a comment about adding the word diversity of our community. And I would like to make sure that we have something there that says all parts of our community. So we are a community made up of diversity, but we are our diversity. So, I mean, if you look at the room, if you look at your neighbors around you right now, we're pretty diverse. So we need to make sure that we're representing all of our community.
Great. So there's a couple things I wanted to touch on in discussion, just to kind of hopefully bring some things to closure. So I have this quote I've been looking for. Here it is. It's from 1961. So this is speaking to the era that you were talking about. It's Dwight D. Eisenhower. And he said, "Down the long lane of history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect." And I saw that on the wall at work, actually, the other day, and I took a picture of it. It's because I think it's really telling it kind of about where we are right now. I met with the mayors of North King County today, and every single city in this area is doing a similar resolution. And it's not because we want to reaffirm stuff that it's because we want to reaffirm everything that we already have in place. It's not that we're trying to make something new. Not one of those mayors, and neither do I, and I don't think the council up here is really being driven by the threat that we're going to lose federal funding. It's just a threat. It's not something that I think is not driving my opinion on whether or not we need this resolution or how it's crafted. At the same time, we have to keep in mind the federal government has jurisdiction over the continuous continental United States, and there's nothing that we can do as a city, and I would frankly be so bold as to say we don't want to draw attention to our city by the federal government by trying to pass a resolution that would basically egg on somebody that has proven to be rather concerning in the White House. So I'm proud that our state was the first on CNN to challenge the executive order that has been put in place around this. I'm looking forward to the resolution of that, I believe, in the next few days to see where that lands. That's why we have three branches of government. In the federal government, you have judicial, executive, and the Congress legislative, thank you, that's what we are, I should know that. And so I really, I appreciate that the balances of government are doing their thing right now and trying to balance out whether or not what makes sense for the community and for the nation. So with that, so I do like a lot of the things. One of the things that I've heard repeated from public comment as well as from the council is that making a list actually does more harm than good. So I think having the list, the first list and the first whereas, I think is pretty inclusive, but I do think that the lists throughout the document could be stricken as proposed. I have no problem changing differently abled to disability. I have no problem adding to the second whereas for any reason at the end of like Councilmember Spivey recommended. And I also agree too that at the last whereas statement where we say similar acts, because it is kind of goofy, I guess, that it says any other acts, because that could, like Councilmember Freed said, it could mean, you know, you fell in love with somebody or whatever, and so it does make sense to say similar acts. And I also think it's important too that the Bothell Police Department's longstanding policy on foreign nationals is a whereas statement in here. It's important to have in here. But I do just want to emphasize to the community that I hope, I don't consider this a waste of our time. I don't think all the other cities in the area feel it's a waste of our time as well. I think it's important. The community came forward and asked us for this, and I think it's something that we should do. I think it's important to make sure that we reaffirm our values all the time. I mean, people go and redo their vows for their marriage. There's no reason. There's no harm, foul in us doing this. So I support that we did this, and I know that like I said, all the other cities are doing this, and I think it's a good thing. So with that, do we have a motion?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Sure. So Councilmember McNeil said that he had concerns about the terminology underserved and underrepresented in the third whereas, and I wanted to know if he felt that was solved by replacing it with all members of our community. And then he also, in the last staff whereas, I thought I heard him say that he didn't think it should be we should specify directed at members of our diverse community. It's our all community, so I was wondering if we struck the word diverse there so that it just read other acts similar acts that are directed at members of our community. Are those solutions that Councilmember McNeil and the rest of council would be supportive?
Let's do it through motions so I can jot them down here.
So how do you want the format of the motion?
So a clarifying question. I had written down as I was taking notes in response to Councilmember McNeil's concern, the blue section that you added, Councilmember Sandberg, that are directed at all members of our diverse community is how I added that in. Is that satisfactory, or would be?
Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Sandberg?
I will make a motion that we adopt the resolution of the City Council of the City of Bothell, Washington, reaffirming its commitment to be a safe, welcoming, and equitable community for all, with the amendments as presented. And I think it would be valuable if we reiterated it so that the city clerk and the staff don't have to go back and try and decipher what we agreed on. So I'd make that motion, and then I think it would be helpful if we went through each whereas statement and the council said yes.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Spivey.
Yep.
To adopt the resolution as presented with the changes. And so, I've tried to track those changes, and I can try to read this off, and I guess maybe, or Paula, do you want to try to do it?
Do you want me to do it?
Do you? Yeah, let's have you do it.
Okay. Whereas the city of Bothell is a city with great diversity among race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, age, sexual orientation, gender identification, country of origin, veteran status, and disability. Whereas in Bothell, all members of the community who choose to live here peacefully have the right to be treated fairly and to live their lives with dignity, free from discrimination or targeting for any reason. Whereas the best way to encourage all members of our community
You meant probably engage, yeah, the best way to engage.
The best way to engage all members of our community with local government is through creating trusting relationships built upon mutual respect and understanding. And whereas the city of Bothell understands that a healthy city is one in which all members of the community have an equity-based opportunity to access city services, participate in public process, and feel safe and welcome in their communities. And whereas the city of Bothell is committed to being pro-equity in city practices and governance through our actions, processes, and decisions, and whereas in the city of Bothell, elected officials have a duty to serve all members of our community and protect their basic human rights, ensure their safety and social well-being. And whereas the city of, so you want to pull in, whereas the Bothell Police Department's longstanding policy on foreign nationals delineates the role of federal and local governments in determining immigration status. And finally, the last whereas, the Council of the City of Bothell strongly condemns acts of hate, violence, intimidation, harassment, or any similar acts, again, that are directed at any members of our diverse community. At all or at any? I think all
I think
grammatically.
it was just directed, okay, so it went, whereas the council of the city of Bothell strongly condemns acts of hate, violence, intimidation, harassment, or any similar acts that are directed at members of our diverse community. Is that what you meant?
First, it was all members, but you could say at any member.
Grammatically,
which is
any.
grammatically
Correct.
correct. So at any member.
Directed at any member.
Right.
Okay. Well, you got the whole second half. Do you want me to read the second half for you? Because nobody touched it.
No, we can, if you'd like us to go through the second half, I can do that as well.
Did you have a change, Councilmember McNeil?
Question. You said equity. Sorry, you said equity instead of equality in one of the, in 1, 2, 3, 4, in the fifth whereas. So it's equality, right?
I don't have my glasses on.
1, 2, 3.
Sorry, that was my glasses. Yes,
Yeah.
pro-equality.
Okay. And then whereas it says whereas the council, is that supposed to say council or is that supposed to whereas the city of Bothell?
Whereas the council of the city of Bothell, I think it's putting the council as our legislative body in front and saying the council of the city of Bothell strongly condemns. So you as our legislative body.
So the maker of the motion, are you okay with how it's been read out verbally?
Yes, I am.
Seconder?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have the whole second half of it. Is there, are you, in your motion, were you accepting the second half as written by staff?
Yes.
In the second? Okay, just to make sure. So do you want me to read the second half or do you have it in front of you there?
I can if you'd like me to.
I can do it. So after the whereas statements, it says, now therefore the city council of the city of Bothell, Washington does resolve as follows. Section 1, the city is committed to making the city of Bothell a safe, welcoming, and equitable community for everyone who lives, works, plays, does business in, goes to school in, or visits our city. Section 2, the city council is committed to standing together with the people of Bothell in opposing hate, violence, and acts of intolerance committed against our community members. Section 3, the city council is committed to continuing our pro-equality work, reaching out and connecting with our community members to ensure that our programs are accessible and open to all individuals. Sound good? Okay. Is there any amending motions? Councilmember Freed?
I'd like to make an amending motion on the first whereas. Whereas the city of Bothell is a city with great diversity, and add the following, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, and so on.
Second.
I can speak to the motion or the amendment. It's, a list is limiting to say, we're trying to give an example of all the things we're trying to include, but I don't want to exclude somebody. So it's including but not limited to.
Okay, sounds like, sounds good. Okay. Is there any discussion on the amending motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to the underlying motion. Oh, we have another amending motion?
Yes. On the back page or page 2, now therefore the City of Council, Section 1, I'll just go to that. The City Council is committed to making the City of Bothell safe, welcoming, and equitable community for everyone. I would like to say, rather than everyone, for each law-abiding citizen who lives, works, plays, does business in, goes to school in, or visits our city. The reason for the addition is because we may not want to welcome murderers, but we certainly want to have law-abiding citizens here.
Is there a second?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we're back to the underlying motion. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember McNeil?
I will be supporting the motion. 51 years ago today, I was born and grew up in this area. And to be sitting on this dais and hearing the conversation that we're having right now is very heartening for me. We heard people come up and speak about not being able to be married. I grew up in a biracial family where my mom is white and my dad is black. And I grew up with being bullied and being hated on as a kid. And the one thing that I want to stress to our community is I feel welcomed here, but some people may not. And I think that it's our responsibility as a community to make sure that everybody feels welcome. And when I sit up here and I make a decision to vote on a resolution, and I say the words all, I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart, that I want everybody to feel welcome. That's not just the adults, that's the kids that go to school. You know, I've got kids that go to the public school system and they come home and they talk about their friends and how their friends may have to go home. And all these different things are going on in our country right now that some of us can't really explain. But the bottom line is when we stand together, we're a country. The name of our country is the United States of America. When we stand united and work for each other, we can make positive things happen in our community. And we're an example. We're the most diverse council in the North Shore area, North End area. And we're an example of what we can do when we stand together and we work together and we look out for one another. So I would tell everybody in this community, I'll go out and knock on doors, whatever I got to do, that this is about uniting our community. And when we hear things that are going on throughout our region, we need to stand for those people as well. Because if we don't, we're going to continue down this road, and 51 years from now, we're going to have this exact same conversation again. So I challenge each and every one of my community members and my neighbors and my friends to stand together and look out for one another and do the right thing. Thank you.
Any further discussion, Deputy Mayor?
So I was actually surprised that some people thought that this was a waste of time or not necessary. And I would challenge you that if you think that, then you're one of the lucky ones who doesn't feel concerned or worried about what's happening in our country and the direction that we're going in. The reason that we're doing this resolution is because we had people come to us that were very, very scared. And I don't think anyone should feel scared to live in the city of Bothell, regardless of whatever their current status is. I empathize with people who, you know, are worried. We're in a challenging time. And I think there are a lot of people who are scared and aren't sure of the direction that we're going in. And I think our job as local officials is to reassure people at the lowest level of government that we're here to provide stability and concern and protection from people's fears. And so, you know, my first job as a city council member is to make sure that I take care of Bothell. And in doing that, that means, if required, it means reassuring people that they're safe here and they're welcome in this community, and they don't have to fear from their local government. I'm taking direction in large part from our very esteemed police chief. And when she says that our current police policy is what will make Bothell residents safe and continue to be safe, I have to agree with her. I mean, she has the experience to know what it takes to create trust in our community. And so I thank her for speaking out very passionately about our policies. And so I wholeheartedly support this resolution. I hope that it provides some comfort for people that are nervous and scared. And I don't at all feel that it's a waste of my time. And I want to thank all my council members for their commitment to diversity and making Bothell safe, and their very thoughtful changes to the resolution tonight.
Any further discussion? No? Yes?
Well, I'd love to
Councilmember
speak again, but,
Well, but you can. You haven't spoken.
well, I made an amendment. It is amazing. We do live in a beautiful country, and we do live in a wonderful state. As I stated before, I've spent much of my life living overseas and serving overseas. There's areas in the world where homosexuals are burned alive, where women's heads are cut off for the very reason that they didn't wear a head covering. There's people of diverse backgrounds that are murdered, slaughtered, abused in the most horrific ways. That is evil, that is wrong, and as a council, that's why we sit here and we will stand here with great confidence. This will pass tonight. We have no room for that. We can't stand a place where different religions can't be honored and experienced, where different colors of skin can't be invited, for different cultures aren't celebrated. So I can tell you, I've seen it firsthand. I've lived hate in my life against me, and I know, James, you said as well, and I would imagine each member of this council is experiencing one way or the other. And because of the stories that we've lived, we bring that here today to stand together. I have a strong feeling united 7-0 against hate in the world. So this statement is limited to the city, but I know it's our view in the world as well. So thank you.
Councilmember Spivey?
Great, thank you. I will be supporting this. As the deputy mayor said, it's okay to reaffirm something. I believe it was the mayor made comment about reaffirming your wedding vows. Well, it was last August, Judge Gelson, she did the honor for my wife and I to renew our wedding vows, and we renew the things that are good in our lives. And so this is a good thing to reaffirm the policies of the department and the city, and that, you know, this is a good thing. We're reaffirming it. We're just putting it out there that we continue to believe in this. And so I think that's what's important here, is that we are acting not just as council members up here, but as neighbors. And we're looking out and we're telling our neighbors that we still want to continue to do the right thing, to believe in our neighbors around us, and to support you and help you and be there in the good times and in the bad times. So I will be supporting this. I agree with Councilmember Freed. I think this one's a slam dunk, 7-0.
Any further discussion on the motion on this side? No? I just want to say one last thing. So resolution is important, but to me it is just words. I think it's important to point out that before Donald Trump was ever president of the United States, the North Shore School District, the city, the police chief, and a lot of people have been working hard on an equity and diversity, or equity and social justice initiative, which is, they're doing two parts. There's one that's an internal group, and then there's one that's working for on an external group. And there's also community groups involved as well. I've been rather surprised, actually, how uncoordinated all the efforts are for so many efforts that are underway, that I hope that this is just the beginning, and I think you'll see a lot more coming from the school district in this regard, as well as the other community groups that are working with us, and we're happy to work with anybody that wants to try to get involved and try to make our community welcoming. So with that, let's take a vote. Passes unanimously. So we are moving on to old business. AB 17-031, proposed lease of the City Hall office space. And I believe we have the city manager.
Yes, good evening. So back at your January 24th council meeting, staff brought before you an item related to the potential lease of office space within the City Hall building. And the second item was a bid that was received to do the work to be able to have that lease here in City Hall. A lengthy discussion ensued with regards to the appropriate place to lease out space and the cost of the bid for the area that was identified to have a potential tenant, and the tenant was Congresswoman Delbeni. For months prior to that, discussions had taken place between Congresswoman Delbeni's staff and city staff on the opportunity for her to be able to lease space, her and her staff to be able to lease space in the City Hall building. Really what prompted the discussion was the very high bid that came in to do the modifications, the tenant improvements for her to be able to move into the building. And from that, council was reluctant to basically spend that kind of money. The construction industry is booming right now, and we had a very aggressive timeline. And so as a result, we got a very high bid in. Council was reluctant to spend that kind of money without further discussion and research and analysis on other potential options within the building. So you continued both items. So you continued the item on the lease as well as acceptance of the bid for the tenant improvements, and you continued them to tonight. Immediately following that meeting, staff met again with Congresswoman Delbeni's office on several occasions and had several conference calls. We did tour the building and looked at several other spaces within the building and had discussions about the cost of doing improvements, the timelines in which we were able to potentially be able to finish those improvements, as well as the fact that we may have done estimates, but clearly the estimates we did for the initial lease and the tenant improvements came in much higher than we expected. And so even if we did estimates on what we thought the tenant improvements would cost, what they would cost, that we couldn't guarantee that that would be the price that those bids would come in at. And so after lengthy discussions, it was determined that the Congresswoman needs to get out of her, the building that she's in, her lease is expiring. She's on a much tighter timeline than we were able to meet. And we needed time to be able to resolve some internal questions, to be able to do the work, to be able to do the design, issue another request for bids. And so it was mutually agreed upon that we couldn't meet the timeline for Congresswoman Delbeni and that she needed to look for office space somewhere else. We really want to thank Congresswoman Delbeni and her staff. We worked really hard to try to make something work. They are in a tough spot. They wanted to come here to City Hall. They want to be in Bothell. We want them to be in Bothell. And so I personally wanted to thank her and her staff. This is an important relationship for us, and we hope that she's able to find office space somewhere in Bothell to continue to serve her district out of the city of Bothell, and that we hope our relationship stays strong in the years ahead, as it's really important for the city and for the citizens of Bothell to have a strong working relationship with her Congresswoman. So I apologize that we weren't able to meet her deadlines and be able to meet the expectations that she needed to be able to lease space in our building, and we look forward to working with her and her staff in the years ahead. And so the two items you have before you tonight, Agenda Bill 17-031 is basically an update. There's no action required because both parties agreed not to move forward with this lease. And the second item that council needs to consider is rejecting the bid that was for the tenant improvements. And so we do need you to look at that item as well and make a decision. And I'm here to answer any questions, and staff is here as well if you have questions on the bid.
Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Freed?
I don't have a question, but I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the information regarding the lease. I am disappointed that Congresswoman Delbeni couldn't be located here. I think there would have been potentially great benefits to the city. I know that she has been a good representative for many issues of the city. Sometimes we disagree, but that is politics. But I think overall, she as a person has definitely had a heart for the city of Bothell. I know that she will continue to do so, whether she is in the city or out of the city. This bid was quite high, and sad that it led us to this point. I moved to authorize the city manager to reject the bid received on January 11, 2017 for the construction of the City Hall 4th floor tenant improvement project.
Second.
Wow, everybody's ready. All right, so it was moved by Councilmember Frieden. I don't know who seconded that, yeah. Let's go with the deputy mayor for this time. Where'd you read that?
That was here.
Oh, there it is, all right. So to authorize the city manager to reject the bid received on January 11, 2017 for construction of the City Hall 4th floor tenant improvement projects. Is it okay if I didn't open this with the right AB? Because we moved on to the next.
That's fine.
Okay, good.
I'll speak to my motion.
Go ahead.
Appreciate the second from whoever it came from. And I think we probably all agree, we've heard horrible stories of, $2,000 toilet seats, these bad examples of government waste. This bid came extremely high, and as a council, I think we considered it over the last meeting or meeting before, and just got to a point where we didn't think it was best for the citizens of Bothell to spend that type of money without the guarantees that we thought that we needed. So this really is a vote of fiscal responsibility with the dollars of the citizens of Bothell, as I see it, even though the benefit of having the Congresswoman here could have been a really good thing. Ultimately, financially, it just put us in a difficult spot.
Any further discussion on the motion? So just real quick, I did talk to Congresswoman Delbeni, and I apologize profusely that this didn't work out. We have been working with her for months, and I'm hoping that she's able to find a place in Bothell, and I'll continue to be working as hard as I can with what limited resources I have to try to connect her with office space. But if anybody knows of an office space that's about 1,400 square feet that you'd be willing to lease out for 18 months, please, by all means, contact me and I'll get you in touch with her staff. So with that, any other further discussion? Seeing none, go ahead, place your vote. Passes unanimously. We are on to new business, AB 17-033, solid waste demand management pilot update, and we have Sabrina Combs to kick us off.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Sabrina Combs. I work in Public Works, and I am here to present on the Demand Management Pilot Project and give you an update as requested by this council a couple of weeks ago. So first, I just want to recap on what is demand management. King County Solid Waste Division created this program, and it was presented to the Metropolitan Solid Waste Management Advisory Committee, also known as MSWAC, and King County Council as an alternative to building a Northeast transfer station. The program tests a modified fee structure that increases as usage of the station increases. It includes longer operational hours for services to meet the needs of the community and occurs at the Factoria transfer station in Bellevue. The test impacts and looks at the reasons and how we would function in a world without a Northeast transfer station with the closure of Houghton. So how will this impact residents? It will impact residents by creating longer travel times to the transfer station because they would have two stations available, Factoria in Bellevue, and they would also have Shoreline. It increases traffic congestion on I-405 because we are adding more hauler trucks, meaning garbage haulers that are hauling the material from homes and businesses to the Factoria station. It increases fees for self-haul customers because if they go during the increased time period when they have more traffic, then they are going to pay a higher fee for dropping off those materials. It also leads to longer wait times at the transfer stations, which impacts our haulers as well as the customers. And then it creates a potential increase in contract costs for future contracts because if those trucks are waiting in long lines, then they're not able to return to the communities they're serving, so they may need more trucks in order to provide that service, which is going to be a fee that goes on to customers' bills. So that is something to think about. So city concerns, as Ms. Wack was presented with this information, has been King County data shows growth of Northeast area. We all agree that the area is growing and booming, as we've seen. that the King County transfer station plans included a new Northeast transfer station. So in the past, when they developed their transfer station plans, they included that we would have a new Northeast transfer station as part of those plans. The impacts to the Houghton transfer station closure and how that impacts our area. Some cities are concerned about building a Northeast transfer station in their community. Other cities are concerned about traffic impacts from routing services to Shoreline. And demand management will lead to differential rate structures in this area. So the rates that Northeast customers will pay will be different than those rates paid in other parts of King County. King County has not informed the public about demand management pilot program and impacts to service levels. We haven't taken the time to communicate this in any way to the community, besides council presentations like this. King County data shows Northeast region is fastly growing. We've had traffic presentations here at council. We see it ourselves when we're traveling on the roadway or look at the booming housing economy. We know that the area is growing. That supports the need for a transfer station in the Northeast. To present some more data on that, King County Solid Waste Division presented at the recent MSWAC meeting a slide showing how tons are disposed of at the different transfer stations. As you can see from this slide, the Houghton transfer station carries 18% of the amount of material that is disposed of at that station. That's a lot of material, but you add Houghton to Factoria for the Northeast area, and you've got 30% of the total waste for the King County area. That's a lot of material that's going through just those two stations. So to further break those numbers down, King County Solid Waste Division provided some additional information to help us understand the impacts of this. So there are 576,000 households, 2,050,000 tons of garbage, recycling, and compost are generated in King County. 920,000 tons of that is garbage, and 54% is recycling rate. Now, the good news is in Bothell, we're doing a much better and higher recycling rate. We are doing a really good job residentially of recycling. But there are 8 transfer stations to handle this material, and Houghton is scheduled to close in 2021. That station is located in Kirkland. There are no current plans for a Northeast station in this area to help support that. So I keep talking about the Houghton transfer station in Kirkland. And the reason that I do that is the current station that cities in the Northeast are using. The cities of Bellevue, Bothell, Kirkland, Redmond, and Woodinville take their material to that station. It was built in the mid-1960s on 8.4 acres of land, so it is an older station. Customers that they service are 84% self-haul customers, 16% commercial customers. It is currently scheduled to close in 2021. King County Solid Waste Division does not have plans to replace it, and that date of 2021 is not guaranteed. That has shifted before. It has limited reuse options after closure because it has been used as a transfer station and it borders an old actual landfill that King County used. There are limited uses that you can use for that space because of the methane gas. The current pilot does not include full closure of Houghton. King County Solid Waste Division has not committed in the recent talks about the pilot program to close Houghton completely to both residential and commercial traffic. So the future options for Bothell, if Houghton closes and we have no Northeast transfer station, is that Bothell haulers, meaning waste management and recology at this point for the city of Bothell, would be taking material to Shoreline and Factoria. Bothell self-haul customers would be taking their material to Shoreline and possibly Snohomish County stations in Everett or Montlake Terrace. This is a concern because at this time we do not have a guarantee in the demand management pilot that we are including Snohomish County in part of this pilot process. We have not confirmed that we will be looking to them for data on usage from King County cities. So one of the questions that comes up when we talk about this program is what is the difference between demand management and putting in a new Northeast transfer station, and why are there so many concerns about it? Well, for one thing, demand management only impacts Northeast cities. They will be paying increased costs for usage. They will be having possible increased contract fees for additional trucks in the future from their haulers. And they will be impacted by less accessibility to transfer stations, unlike other parts of King County. They will also experience longer wait times when they visit the transfer stations at Factoria and Shoreline because of the increased traffic. And they will have increased traffic when traveling to these locations. So with that information in comparison to a new Northeast transfer station, one of the things that I want to make clear is that When King County builds a new transfer station, the entire system pays for it, not just one community in that system. So for instance, when Bow Lake was built, the entire system is paying for that in new rates, like the new rates that we charged to our residents in 2017 and through 2018. Those increased rates are helping to pay for that station. With demand management, we're not doing that same thing. We're putting the burden of that cost and the accessibility onto one community, the Northeast community, and the cities in it. One of the other considerations for building a new Northeast transfer station is we'd need available space to build the station, and that is one of the concerns that we've discussed before. So some of the other conversations that come up when talking about space and the new Northeast station is the concern of some cities to host the station. We all know this is a valid concern. The size of the center, the size of where it's located, how that impacts the community. However, what we've heard is that some of the local communities around us have said, but we already host a facility. There is a difference in the type of facilities that cities are hosting. Bellevue and Kirkland are hosting King County run and operated facilities that citizens within King County are paying for. However, cities like Woodinville and Redmond are not. The city of Woodinville is hosting, or has, I should say, a waste management owned and operated Cascade recycling facility. That is a commercial facility. It is like any other commercial business coming into a community to have a business located in that community. Redmond and Woodinville both has Cedar Grove compost yards. They are commercial, sales and operated Cedar Grove properties where they provide compost available to those communities for citizens to purchase or businesses to purchase. So those are not the same as King County solid waste facilities. One of the other concerns of cities is that we are not communicating with the public. We have not done any advanced communication from King County to the impacted citizens in those areas of those cities to say, here's what's going to happen, this is what we will be doing. A communication plan is being created by King County Solid Waste, and they have told us about it, but we have not seen any documentation of what it will include. One of the additional concerns that came up recently at the meetings is King County Solid Waste is not committed to reducing the burden on cities by providing a website, email address, and/or hotline number for customers to call. So when customers use this new system and are upset about it, those calls are potentially coming into our city hall or my desk for me to address. And I didn't create this plan. This is a King County pilot that they're creating, and I may not have all the answers to address the concerns that the citizens are bringing to us. So we have simply asked that King County provide a King County staffed resource where people can go to get their questions answered and log their complaints and concerns and their experiences. King County Solid Waste Division is not committed to reporting customer feedback to MSWAC. One of the recent questions that we asked is, with this test going on and the potential concerns about ramifications from it, is it possible for us to get regular feedback? So create a reporting line and the resources that you put in place and the tracking of data, and then give us an update at each meeting. We meet monthly where we can learn how this system is going and maybe have some reevaluation of the system. Should we continue this pilot? At 3 or 6 months, should we take another look at it and see how it's going, and maybe we should make some different decisions? And then our biggest concern is potential future litigation concerns from impacted communities. When citizens do hear about this, are we going to be looking at concerns about litigation complaints and people filing lawsuits because they see the difference in service, the difference in cost that they're experiencing over other areas in the community? So what we have asked, in various cities have asked during these MSWAC meetings, is that the pilot program addresses a few options that we've asked for. Those are complete the closure of Houghton during the pilot, meaning you close that station completely during the pilot to both commercial and residential services. That allows us to have a viable test so that we see completely what would happen to the overall system if that station is closed. That you include monthly updates to the solid waste committees, both the MSWAC committee and the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which is a separate committee built up of haulers and other organizations, so that we could all have the data, review it, and understand what's happening with the pilot. Create a communication plan that includes King County staffed complaint resources for cities to refer people to, so that when I do get those calls, I have a place to put them or send them to. That if they go to our website looking for information, we can refer them to a resource where they can get more details directly from King County. that we include Snohomish County in the pilot and request reports, that Snohomish County is included in this pilot in more detail, that they're confirmed to be included, that they will be providing some data to us, that we will have that data to look at and analyze and understand. And then this pilot is a year long. It's starting in 2018. And then there's additional time for them to create reporting. We shouldn't wait to start siting a new Northeast station until after all of that is done. We should look to potentially looking for those possible site locations now so that we have some available options if the pilot does fail. So these are the things that cities have asked for. So what I'm seeking tonight, in partnership with Councilmember Sandberg as we attend this meeting, and thank you to the council for appointing Councilmember Sandberg to that meeting. It has been a great help having her representing the city on our behalf. I am asking that council provide us some direction related to the demand management pilot program, how you'd like us to proceed at these meetings, and what is your interest in a Northeast transfer station in the future? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any, well, let's see how we want to do this. I guess we can open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions of staff? Councilmember Freed?
As a child, every Saturday, I think my dad had something against Saturday morning cartoons. But we lived on 8 acres here in South Bothell. We had chickens, cows, pigs. I don't know what it was, but every Saturday we ended up Houghton Station. My dad never wanted me to rest on a Saturday morning. A hardworking man, and today now he owns many acres in Montana. I'm sure he finds some way. But why does it even have to be shut? I don't even understand it.
So the Houghton station has, as I explained, it's an older station. The remodeling they did recently was really just about sound prevention, but it hasn't been built up to the standards of newer station. It doesn't have a lot of the features of newer stations for people to do offloading. It doesn't have a lot of the newer items that people could include. And that decision about closure is between the city of Kirkland and King County Solid Waste Division, or King County.
So down in Fremont, I went to school at Seattle Pacific University. There's a station just down there, I believe, in Fremont, and it's on a very small place, but it's very accessible for all the residents that live in that area, so they don't get cluttered backyards or whatever it might be. And the more convenient we can make these transfer stations, I think, best. And more familiar of its location, I just wonder why Kirkland just can't work it out to find that we can still keep it there, because access to the freeway has always been so easy. Is that beyond our ability to state that we support retaining Houghton?
No, you could state that. That is still additional negotiations that would have to take place between City of Kirkland and King County. One of the things I have asked for at multiple meetings is, we got the Recology store, and we've all seen, I believe, the benefits of that store. The accessibility for residents to be able to walk in and drop off that hard-to-recycle item. So I've said, why don't we look at, King County provided some presentations where they talked about, here's some really cool stations that are multi-purpose or multi-use for communities. Why aren't we looking at that for this? It doesn't have to be 20 acres. It could be much less a storefront or a joint facility that allows to meet the community feature needs. That is not included in the pilot as well, because we're not looking at siting potential, because we're not looking at any potential for looking at the future if the pilot program fails. We're not looking at what the options would include.
Interesting.
So
Well,
that's unfortunate.
I hate to say it, but I mean, you do have to shut down that station to see the drastic impact that would have. The Recology store is phenomenal. I was just there 2 days ago dropping off 3 bikes, and they took them. I couldn't believe it.
That's great.
What about, Ron Sims was successful back in the day to place Brightwater in Snohomish County to the service of King County. And there's a lot of land up where, why couldn't a transfer station be there, or could that be a viable location for a future Northeast transfer station?
I think that's a bigger conversation, again, between the 2 counties, if you want it to be in another county. I have not heard that brought up, but again, I think that goes under the siting conversation. If we include that that's a requirement of the pilot, then that could be one of the elements we want included as part of that.
It's certainly in an area of significant growth. I mean, the whole 180th corridor, 35th, 39th, a lot of growth going on up there. So I appreciate your work on here and whatever we can do to help support your efforts. So does that answer the questions she had for us? Those 2?
They're up on your screen there. So how do you feel about the discussion on the demand management pilot program and then interest in a Northeast transfer station?
So I think I got those both. Yeah. All right.
Deputy Mayor?
So, in watching your presentation, all I could think was, why are they not taking any of the suggestions? They seem very straightforward and common sense. So is there something underlying that we don't understand?
There's not. I will say it has been a difficult process. I think Councilmember Sandberg witnessed for the first time some of the communications that have been going back and forth between the cities to the county. And I'm sure she will speak to what she saw at that meeting. But we have just been suggesting, and all we've wanted is a confirmation that these things will be included. The problem is when we suggest these items, it's we'll consider that and think about it. That's not a confirmation that it's going to be included in the pilot. We had subcommittee meetings with just the impacted Northeast cities, and some of the items that we listed out and we thought we had agreed to ended up at the MISWAC meeting with modifications. So that is a concern. That's why we want to see in writing what the commitment is that this pilot will include, because we understand that we are at the point where King County Council feels we need to do this pilot to see the data, to see what's happening, but we need to do the pilot in a way that is correct, where we all get the data we need, and we're seeing the data in an effective timeline to make appropriate decisions moving forward.
Is there some outcome that we're driving toward? Do you get the sense that there's some inevitable? I guess I'm trying to understand, because the questions that you're asking, they seem very common sense to me, that you can't get a good sense for what the impact is if you don't close Houghton. And I can't remember what else is on that list. And so I guess I feel like maybe there's some information missing. Can you tell us a little bit about how the other Northeast cities are reacting and what their stances are on some of these issues?
There's actually been a lot of conversation from various cities and in fact, it's expanded beyond the Northeast cities, because other cities are starting to see if a program like this goes live and it becomes something that is a tool that's available, it could impact their resources. So other cities are even joining in further south and saying, wait, we have questions too. They're bringing up some really good questions and points that we need to consider. So we are trying to make sure that the test validly tests the system. And in order to do that, you've got to make sure the right components are in there. So,
is there an assumption that nobody wants a replacement for Houghton in their municipality? Is that an assumption that people are making, is that no one wants to host?
some nearby cities have expressed concerns about that, and when Pat McLaughlin came to speak to this from King County Solid Waste Division's perspective, he spoke about that. But what we're only asking at this point is just take a look and see what potential there is so that we have some resources or something that we can pursue as our next steps if needed.
I guess I'd be interested in, I guess I should answer your questions. So I would support the items that you've included in asking for with the demand management pilot. And I guess I would be interested in the whole siting process. What are the parameters? How much land does it take? Who's interested? Who's not interested? I guess my assumption is most cities would say, well, not, NIMBY, not in my backyard. But I don't know that. I don't know what it entails, or if there are locations within even Bothell where it wouldn't impact residents. So I would also be interested in looking into potential sites within Bothell or outside of Bothell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
Well, I think you brought up some great questions about the pilot, and I think they need to be answered. This smells. It really does. Pardon the pun. It seems like somebody has already made up their mind. They're going to get as much money out of the northeast section of King County as they can. And I think it's ludicrous. And for them to not even think about having another site in the northeast section of the county, come on. It doesn't make any sense to me unless there's a game plan that I don't know about here. And I truly think there probably is one. I think you need to bring out the concerns. I think they need to look at another site in the northeast section, whether it be in Houghton, because they can't really develop it. There's methane leaks all over the place. What are their options there? Try to get as much information from the pilot as you can. They're going to shut it down, and then they have to look for another site in the north end.
Councilmember Sandberg?
First of all, garbage is very, very sexy, and I'm so glad that I am the council appointee to this committee. And I also want to let you know that most regional committees we participate on, everybody is generally rowing in the same direction, not on this committee. Because if you're going to have a different opinion if you're a city with a transfer station, a city that's going to be impacted when Houghton closes, if you're a city on the way to a transfer station, if you're a city who feels that they're already hosting transfer station-like activities, if you're a city who thinks that a new Northeast transfer station is just going to be a waste of $100 million that you don't want to pay for because the whole system pays for, like, for example, the Bow Lake transfer station. So everybody has a different concern, and yet I would say the common theme amongst all the city representatives is the frustration they have of the responsiveness with King County Solid Waste Department. And so I appreciate that. And so I go there and I want to make sure that I'm representing council's direction. And so it sounds like everybody feels like moving forward on these pilot options is important. But in the end, I guess I need to know when I'm in there advocating for Bothell's position, do we ultimately support, or would, if the pilot project fails, the demand management project fails, are we in support of a Northeast station? Because like Sabrina mentioned, Woodinville already, they have it's not a King County transfer station, but it is a recycling facility that has all the same impacts as a King County transfer station. And in fact, they claim that it has greater volume than any of the other transfer stations. I don't know if that data is true. And so Woodinville is saying, not us, don't look at us. And a lot of jurisdictions are saying, sure, have a Northeast transfer station, just not us. Because a lot of people don't want that in their community. And so I guess I need to know from you all, is the council in general supportive of relocating a Northeast transfer station? Because Kirkland's position is, we've hosted it for long enough, we've done our part. Now, at least the Houghton residents, the Houghton neighborhood says, we've done our part, it's time for somebody else to do their part. So are we right? Are we willing to do our part? And when we think about siting it, it's logically going to be south of the river because it's close to the county line, and it's the best served by the new lanes on 405. So you know, that's an assumption I'm making, but I guess I need to know, are people supportive of siting a Northeast station, knowing that that is eventually going to end up in somebody's neighborhood and we're going to hear about it because they're going to be upset with us that we supported that direction? Or you want to collect the data for now and not even think about a Northeast transfer station because that is one of the final bullet points? Or you're opposed to a Northeast transfer station, either because you think it needs to go someplace else or it's not necessary in the first place.
Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. So I had a couple questions. The transfer stations of today, how are they built? How are they constructed? Are they constructed differently to where you can kind of hide the smell? They don't have the gas issues anymore?
You know, that's the interesting thing, and I don't know if Councilmember Sandberg was at one of the meetings where there was this sort of assumption that communities, all the cities hosting them didn't like them, and some of the cities hosting didn't really have that same opinion. Depending on the community around it, I think some cities recently have struggled, like City of Algona recently has had some struggles with siting. But these newer facilities have a different look. You're welcome to tour a facility anytime. King County Solid Waste Division is always willing to host that. But they have a new look. They provide more resources. For instance, Factoria recently, as part of their rebuild, is including hazardous material, so it's more useful for the community around it. The stations, depending on where they're located, they try to put those, like at Houghton where they built the wall so that the sound barrier's there, but it's a decorative wall. It's a very pretty wall that makes it visibly appealing to the community around it. So they try their best to incorporate them, but for instance, until I started working in solid waste, I didn't know some of the stations I was driving by were transfer stations. I just thought they were some sort of weird commercial facility. I wasn't guessing that they were a transfer station. Now, working in this industry, I can drive by a couple and be like, that's a King County station, that's a Snohomish County, partly because of my knowledge, but I don't think the average citizen knows except for the information that's been presented about that station coming to their area as part of the process to build it.
Is there a economic benefit to having a station within your community?
I think that's a better question that we could pose at some of the cities that are hosting them, because as I said, some have negative responses to that, some have positive responses to that. There have been some concerns when we went through interlocal agreements a couple years ago about how we were benefiting or mitigating the cities that were hosting those stations. So I think it just depends on that community and how they felt that relationship has gone.
Okay, so there would be, so it sounds to me like if it's a Northeast station, I think you listed off Kirkland, Bellevue, Woodinville, and Kenmore, and Bothell.
Redmond.
Redmond is also included in that. So all of them would be participating in a Northeast station? Is that correct? Am I?
Depending on their hauler and how they flow, because you might find that Kenmore and Lake Forest Park are actually taking their material to Shoreline, because that is a pretty close benefit. But then again, depending on the location of a new station, they may say traffic flow wise and other things, it's easier to get to this new Northeast station. So it just depends on the location and the accessibility of that station.
And would that have a benefit if let's just say a station was located somewhere south of the river or even north within our area, general area here? Would that help us keep our pricing in line, or how would that work for our local residents?
It doesn't affect our pricing. What it may do is in future contract negotiations with haulers, we may be able to say, you're not going very far. You're literally going up the street for the garbage tonnage that you're taking to that station. So there may be some benefits there.
And you had mentioned the Recology store, and that was interesting because you could have a facility that maybe houses a store, a location like that, an educational piece to it.
You could. In fact, in our subcommittee meetings, I suggested that the county look at potentially creating a site where it has community rooms, other resources that the communities are asking for locally, a community center, as well as where, you know, Saturday, Sunday, you know, there's reduced times and you have the resources, but you could also have these open spaces that people could rent out and resource, as well as an education center and a drop-off site for community members. And even though they had suggested those as one presentation several months ago, in the subcommittee meeting, that wasn't accepted as much of an offer because, again, siting is something that they didn't want to focus on right now. They want to focus on getting the pilot through and seeing the results from it. But that is, when you're thinking about siting and this growth in this area, a 1 to 2 year timeline, in addition to what, you know, actually it's like 3 years, that timeline is huge when you think about land in this area and accessibility for thinking about where to put a station.
Yeah, I would definitely like to hear more information on that piece of it, because that partnership could actually be really good, especially since it is a King County program. There might be dollars available to help out on the siting, also on a community style center as well. If you some of the other questions I would have is if you cite something within your city, that's a pretty big impact on your roads.
It is.
correct? For
It is.
trucks driving
And that's where mitigation comes into some effect for those cities. I don't know all of the details. I know some of the cities talked about it when we were talking about it during the agreement discussions, but that is something we could find out more details about if we needed to at that time.
Okay. And if you go back to the slide with the various questions or, complete closure of Houghton, I think the only way you really do get a true pilot study done is if you do close it completely. Otherwise, it's not going to give you a true valuation. And I think that the tolling and the traffic and things like that are going to have a pretty big impact as well. So I think completing that, shutting that down would be good. The monthly updates are a must. Communication with King County staff, I mean, that's a must. The Snohomish County and King County piece is a big one. Obviously, we straddle two counties. I think that partnership and understanding how that could work, as Councilmember Fried, I think, brought up, would be big to make sure that we have that communication there. Snohomish County is obviously the fastest growing portion of our city, so understanding how we deal with that would be good. I'm actually, the siting piece, I'm actually excited about because I think that there's an opportunity potentially there for our community. If we can somehow control some of that negotiation bargaining, and keep costs under control. But I would like to know much more about, the traffic impacts to our roads, how that impacts public works as far as, resurfacing, repatching, things like that. But if there is an economic benefit to our community to potentially host that, I think that we should be looking at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spivey.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for all your hard work on this. Wow. Just the numbers that you present, it seems like a no-brainer that anybody should be able to go, yeah, you need a Northeast transfer station. Looking at it, right now, what is it? The Northeast contributes a fifth of the solid waste that the county generates, and it's going to grow by 24%. The Houghton transfer station, the usage will grow by 24%. It's unreal that you have to have a study. But if you're going to have a study, you have to do good science. And so I think you need to do all the things I'm supportive of all the things that the cities are asking for. I think that if you have to bring in UW students or whatever to show what a good study is to the county, then let's do that. I think it's important to let all the King County council members whose districts are affected by this, so I would say all the North End districts and plus the East Side districts into Bellevue, that those county council people need to be aware of this problem. And they need to be kept in the loop just like all the cities. As far as siting goes, King County wants to put it into a city. Well, why doesn't King County put it into King County, unincorporated King County, and do it that way? Then the cities aren't hosting it, the county's hosting their own facility. So I think that's an important thing there. So I'm supportive of the study, provided it's done in a way that it's good science. It's a good study, and I'm supportive of a siting option. I'm also supportive of the idea that if we can come to an agreement with Kirkland to keep it at Houghton, and I'm familiar with the Factoria site. It's a beautiful site. They're handling solid waste differently now. You're not dumping it into a truck. You're dumping it onto a concrete floor, and they load it up into compactors, and they haul it off. They're being much more efficient. It's great. So I think from the standpoint of what you see would be a whole lot more appealing to the residents of Houghton. But let's approach Kirkland, because if it's going to be shut down for a year to do a study, heck, we could build a facility. They could build the facility that they need in that year. The modern facility. And so I would rather be, if we're going to be shut down for a year, build a new facility. I think that's the thing to do. But I support the work that you guys are doing. Again, I would ask the question, why can't it be hosted in unincorporated King County if we're going to host a Northeast facility? But yeah, for the amount of traffic and garbage and everything else, it would be a shame that our residents out here have to pay more than everybody else because of an idea. I'm just not supportive of that, so I hope you got what you needed.
Thank you.
So I have a couple questions. The fluctuation on the cost, is that going to be based on like how busy it is, like the tolls are on 405, or is it going to be like these hours of the day, if you come here, you're going to pay more? Is it going to be, is it predictable when they do their cost adjustments?
So they initially talked about hours of day. Then they started saying depending on frequency of use. So I think there are just a lot of components of the study that we don't feel are completely ironed out in a way so that we feel very clear about what the customer would experience. One of their ways of addressing this concern was to say we put in cameras. So he said we put in cameras so like when you go to other certain services in the community, you can see ahead of time how busy that station is. Unfortunately, what one of the cities realized is they went and checked the cameras at Factoria, and it only shows the first 3 cars in the lane. Well, that doesn't tell me how long that line is, and that doesn't help me get a perspective. So the concern is really clarifying all of these points for this test so we know the impact, because you can go online. The goal is that you could go online and see the video. You could also see the wait times. You could understand the rate structure that they're at right now. But with that fluctuation, we really want that fine-tuned so that we can communicate clearly to customers about what they will experience. And that again goes into the communication plan. They should be clearly explaining in detail what that looks like.
That brings me to my next point. I'm shocked that, so when in 2018 is this supposed to happen, the pilot?
They said the beginning of 2018. We haven't had an exact date. Some conversation has been January 1st because it makes sense for a full year. But again, because a lot of these items are still under discussion, I'm not holding to any dates or information until we see the formalized plan in front of us.
And so they are creating a plan?
They are creating a plan. They've given us some drafts as they are working on those pieces, but we don't have the final document with all the details, including a communication plan and all those pieces laid out.
They're kind of running out of time then, I would assume? I mean, shouldn't they have had their communication plan by now?
Well, my concern, and that's why I expressed that, is that I would assume you're building a communication plan, but if you have or haven't, we need to make sure we see that plan so that we can comment as cities on how that will affect us and our residents, and making sure they're getting information in a timely way to understand what's happening and be able to respond to it.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about the communication piece between King County and the cities and King County and the general public on how they're rolling out this study. And I do think I've heard different things about the sentiment in Kirkland of the residents about having Houghton there. And so I think it is totally worth at least trying to see if Houghton can stay open. I think moving that station so close to the border, the northern border of the county, starts bumping into, like you said, pull Snohomish County into the study, because you're going to start affecting what happens with Motley Terrace transfer station. That I don't see why they would want to move it out of Kirkland. So if Kirkland's hoping to get rid of a transfer station, I don't know if that's really going to be the outcome of this effort, because do we have anywhere that you could cite a transfer station south of the river in Bothell, according to zoning?
I haven't looked into that detail because I've not gotten direction from you to do that. Our initial request to King County was just start doing some GIS searches and tell us what the parameters are that you're looking for, what the site would look like, so that we could start looking at GIS maps. We haven't had that discussion yet, so we've just talked about it more in a piece we'd like to include as part of this pilot. So I don't have an answer to that at this time.
And then I'm a rather novice at this topic, but I heard that there was a plan that was written a while ago, and then there was a plan done again to figure out the demand management. And the newer plan, did it say that the system didn't necessarily need a northeast station?
Their assumption until the pilot completes is that demand management might fix the system so we don't need a northeast transfer station. The concern is from the cities impacted is that, for example, with Bothell, if demand management were not just a pilot and went live, we would have several ramifications going forward that we would be impacted by. Future contract negotiations we'd be doing in a couple years would be different. Customers' impacts trying to take material, they would be using Snohomish more, and I'd probably hear from Snohomish County eventually. There are several different factors that are included in that. So the current, what we did in the process was we had several meetings over, I want to say about 6 months, where we talked about transfer stations and planning and resources, and they threw a lot of data at us, and we got about a 200+ page report that we looked at. And even in that, the results showed that we still needed a Northeast station. But then there was changes, and the new document says demand management might fix this problem, so we don't need a Northeast station. But that's really hard for some of the cities in the Northeast area to understand, as well as other cities, because the other concern is that people from the South who might be using Factoria are going to now get pushed to other stations, and so there's further impacts throughout the region.
Okay. And then, so it sounds like there's some dysfunction amongst the group, like Councilmember Sandberg said, that they're all going in different directions.
It depends.
I wouldn't say it's dysfunction. I think they all have very different opinions that serve the residents of their communities. So, yeah, I didn't mean dysfunction. I just meant that everybody has a different set of concerns, and they have different solutions to the problem. And so I just need to know when I'm sitting there, when the eye of Waste Sauron shines on Bothell, and everybody else is saying, well, I don't want a transfer station, I just need to know, and what I'm hearing is, it sounds as though you're relatively comfortable with the idea of a siting process for a Northeast station that could include Bothell. That's what I sort of heard, and then I heard, but wouldn't it be better if it was an unincorporated King County? You know, that might be a premature discussion, because I know we're just trying to focus on making sure the demand management study incorporates the elements that protect us and give us the right data. You know, that is step one, but the logical next step, and a lot of the people in that room believe that the pilot's going to fail and we're going to need a Northeast station anyway. And so I just need to know, am I supposed to be deflecting interest from Bothell like some of our other Northeast jurisdictions are doing? Or am I supposed to be open to that possibility with the idea that maybe we can negotiate something good for our community? So I just need to know that.
So, So I think they should move forward with the pilot project. I think they should shut Houghton down during the pilot project. And no, I'm not in favor of it's being sited in the city of Bothell. Not in favor of it. Do we want to go another round of comments? Do you need more direction from council?
Are you in favor of having a Northeast transfer station?
Yeah, if there's a plan, if there's some sort of direction that we need one, I would be in support of that we need one. But from what I understand now, we don't know if we need one or not. So that's why they're doing the demand management pilot, right?
Well, cities would tell you and the data would tell you we need one, but they're saying they need further evidence. King County Council saying they need further evidence from King County Solid Waste to validate that information, which is the purpose of the test. Does that make as clear as it can be?
Yeah.
I know it's...
Sounds like King County. Okay. Do we want to do another round of comments to answer the questions? Yes. Councilmember Freed.
I think we need a letter signed by you, the mayor, and even every council member up here as well, directly to Dow Constantine to ask him to step up and be the leader on this. I mean, it's common sense that we need a transfer station, and I think it's actually anti-environment to say that we don't. I mean, picture if we don't have one. Picture what is the more likelihood if you have a transfer station across the street that you're going to take your broken down rusty garbage to that transfer station, or if it's 10 to 15 minutes away, you're probably more reticent to take it? We've all driven past neighbors' yards within our city or other cities that you can see garbage starting to accumulate. James and I are in the business of actually visiting other people's houses as we look at, opportunities, and I am flabbergasted sometimes the properties that I look at, how much garbage accumulates on people's property. We absolutely need one, and to think that we have to spend time in a study to say that we need one when our population is exponentially growing is like flabbergasting. So I'm asking you, Andy, if you'd be willing to write a letter to say that we, the city of Bothell, asked Dow Constantine to recognize that we're kind of wasting time here, like Del Spivey said. Like, why spend a year studying if we need a need? The need is clear. Let's spend a year building a facility rather than studying a need for something that we, with anybody with absolute common sense, would say we needed. Another statement here. If we look for a place south of the river in the city of Bothell, there is a place already, and it's the Brickyard Park and Ride. South of that, there has been plans for years on the books for a mixed-use development there on King County. I guess it's Bothell property, but King County somehow has ownership of that property. That would be a place potentially where they would go, and I would rather see that it stays in Houghton, where everybody's already familiar with that location. So a letter.
Anybody else would like to provide further comment? Councilman Ragney?
I'm in agreement with the letter. I think it's ludicrous, actually. If 30% of the waste or tonnage in King County comes from Factoria and Houghton, and we're going to shut it down and say we don't need to replace it, it doesn't make any sense to me. And as far as would we be willing to host a transfer station, I think we're a city of inclusion, aren't we? And I wouldn't be against it.
Councilmember Spivey?
I'm in support of the letter, and I think that it needs to be very clear that anything that is going to be an increase to the residents in North and Northeast King County, an increase in cost to use transfer stations is unacceptable. Anything that will cause an increase in their garbage service is unacceptable because of haul times to go to other transfer stations. And essentially, by closing and and reducing the number of transfer stations is essentially a breach of contract with King County on our garbage. Garbage is big money. They put the screws to us about when we annexed it into Snohomish County, that the garbage had to go to King County, not Snohomish County. Garbage is big money, and if they want to play this little game, then gosh dang it, maybe we need to fight back a little bit and tell them they're in breach of contract, and we're going to go to Snohomish County for all of our garbage services. I don't know, but I think we need to start playing a little hardball with them, and it starts with the letter.
Anybody else? On this side. Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. I'm also in support of the letter. And I think we do need to be sitting at the table with the options, what's going to happen in the Northeast area here. We're 40,000 plus right now and only growing, so I think we need to make sure we look out for our citizens here and our neighbors as well. So we're the big boy on the block. We need to make sure that we're sitting at that table and involved in those decisions, so I am definitely in support of a letter.
Councilmember Sandberg, did you want to go again? Or are you good? Oh, yeah, you haven't gone. There you go. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I'm in support of a letter. I don't even know what to say. It's just common sense what you're asking. So I'm for common sense and and stating that let's be real about what the options are.
Sounds like we're writing a letter. I do think what Councilmember Spivey is a good and an important point to say that we're interested in pursuing or at least exploring the option of switching to Snohomish County.
I will definitely speak to the city attorney about that.
Okay. I think that's it. Everybody's good? We are ready for a break. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back at, let's say, 8:40. Does that sound good to everybody? 8:40. No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
There we are.
go.
So we're back from our break, and we're on AB 17-034, an appeal of director's interpretation of BMC 1404-300. Before I open the public hearing, City Attorney, do you have an update?
I do. So Mr. Jones is here. He's the gentleman standing over here in the suit. And based on the other presentations that he's seen this evening, he is requesting a continuance to move the matter to the 21st. We have looked at the projected agenda. That meeting is currently scheduled for approximately an hour and a half, and so we do think that it is something that we could put on that agenda. The city has no objection if the council were to vote to move that to the 21st. He has cited, one of the things that we are going to talk about before opening the public meeting is that, or the public hearing, is to determine the amount of time that each side would get. I've spoken with Director Burdette, and he indicated his presentation was going to be approximately 10 to 15 minutes, and then they would be up to the council to then set a time for the appellant to speak. The city doesn't really have a recommendation, but I would note that if this were a court of appeals, the oral arguments are limited to 15 minutes, and the Supreme Court of Washington is limited to 20 minutes. And so as just giving you that as a guide as to how often oral arguments are generally, how often they generally last. Have I covered all of your concerns, sir? Okay, and the other reason is that, so when we spoke with him during the break, he also indicated that he originally intended to address a number of appeals that he feels were unanswered in the past. I didn't have any information to speak on that, so he understands that the purpose of this hearing is to address specifically the determination that was made by Director Burdette in October of 2016, and that the appeal would be limited to just that interpretation. And so with that, he then indicated that he would like the extra 2 weeks in order to prepare a presentation within the time frame that you all decide, so that he can be prepared to put his best foot forward, so to speak. Is that all correct?
So before we make a motion to a date certain, do you want us to all take a turn chiming in on how long we think the oral arguments should be?
If you could.
Okay. Who would like to go first? Oral arguments. Councilmember Agnew?
I think if Director Burdette's going to take about 10, 15 minutes, it'd be 10, 15 minutes, no longer.
Deputy Mayor?
I would agree with that.
Councilmember Spivey?
Seems like the industry standard's 15, so I would say 15.
Okay. One more?
I would agree.
All right, we have a majority, 15 minutes. Okay. Is there a motion to postpone to a date certain? Is that correct? Postpone to a date certain? Okay.
It is.
Of February 21st?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to postpone this agenda item to a date certain of February 21st. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. There you go. Passes unanimously. That's the end of our agenda, I believe. Is there any city manager or committee reports?
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Any committee reports from council? Nope. Happy birthday, Councilmember McNeil. Real quick, I won't sing to you because I knew that you didn't want us to. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember McNeil.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Agnew. Passes unanimously. We're adjourned.